be short. Well, I am still active duty, E4 Navy Petty Officer. Where do we go as a movement from here? Well, as of right now, looking at it in the short term, we continue this education process, educating members of the military, but just our society as a whole to the democratic rights that we all have. This is a democracy movement. This is how we see this, and this is how we formed this from the very beginning, to actually have a movement that is guised, within the law. When I think about that, I think back to, as a child, we learned about the Freedom Ride, right? And of course, we all remember that bus blowing up, and of course, all the terror and the torture that these guys went through. I mean, some of them, people like Congressman John Lewis, for example, it's lucky they're still alive, right? But that movement was guys in law. So the actual movement was testing the laws. That's how I see the appeal for redress, is taking the law that is written and putting it into action. And so in the short term, continue to do that, continue to get as many members of Congress on board with us, because we believe that once those who are within the military, those who have served, continue to put their pressure on this Congress is going to have to either yield to demands of the people, or, as David Courtwright alluded to earlier, the people will begin to take unorthodox and untraditional acts of protest and dissent to bring this war to an end. I am reminded that in 1968 in Chicago, people were peacefully petitioning their government, and what the Chicago police did was respond with brutality. And so what happened, years later, now you got masses of thousands of people here in Washington, D.C. So keep that in mind, that people are going to struggle for that which they have to have for their rights and for their freedom. And if they can't get it through the suites, this is where we are, then they'll get it in the streets. So that's in the short term. In the long term, I'm looking at this, David Courtwright, and we rep this guy a lot, don't we? But he really gave us a framework. That's what he gave us. It took 30 years for it to come along. I was kidding, David. But he gave us a framework. And what that framework alludes to is there being a permanent entity that does this work. Not just the mobilization that we see here today, but a permanent organization. One that can advocate on behalf of active members of the military, not just on the question, not only on the questions of war and the proper distribution of resources, health care, what have you, for our soldiers and sailors and Marines, but just those basic grievances that we go through every day. I mentioned earlier that when I got this book off the coast of Iraq, we were already engaged in a struggle in my shop. Just, you talk about Gina, we had nooses hanging in our shop off the coast of Iraq, you know what I mean? We're still dealing with those kinds of issues. We're still dealing with, the issues of sexism in the workplace. We're still dealing with, just those basic grievances that are within the general society, is also within our military. Why? Because our military is reflective and extension of our society, right? So that's why I see this movement going, John. A permanent entity that's an advocacy arm, and as Dr. David Courtwright is our senior fellow. Thank you so much.